Let's talk about burnout. And I mean, really talk about it. Because burnout isn't just about feeling tired, it's this silent erosion of your very being. And the craziest part is, it often starts when you're at the absolute top of your game. This isn't just stress we're dealing with. It's a fundamental breakdown of your nervous system that happens when the demands on you just constantly outpace your ability to recover. So in this explainer, we're going to pull back the curtain on the 5 critical stages of burnout that so many high achievers completely miss. And more importantly, we'll talk about how to start the journey back to yourself.
Okay, so here's how we're going to break this all down today. We've got 4 parts. First, we'll define what burnout actually is, according to the official global health authorities. Then we're going to map out the 5 subtle stages of how it takes hold. We'll also clear up that really common and confusing question, is it burnout or is it depression? And finally, we'll get to the good stuff, real, actionable pathways to start rebuilding and recovering. I really want to start with this because it gets right to the heart of why burnout is so sneaky and dangerous. You know, it's not some sudden event. It's a slow, quiet creep into your life, a gradual dimming of your light. You might not even recognize it's happening until your body starts waving these huge red flags. I'm talking chronic headaches, digestive chaos, waking up at 3 a.m. with your heart racing, or just a complete and utter shutdown. This is so much more than just being stressed. It's your entire system hitting its absolute breaking point. So to really understand what we're dealing with, we have to get past the buzzword and look at the official definition. This is going to give us a solid clinical foundation for everything we're about to talk about. So the World Health Organization gives us a really precise way to understand burnout. They define it as a syndrome that has 3 key dimensions. First, there's profound exhaustion, and this isn't just I'm tired. It's a feeling of being completely drained of all physical and emotional energy. Second, you've got an increasing mental distance from your job, which usually shows up as cynicism or just feeling negative about everything. And the third piece is a sense of reduced professional efficacy, that feeling that you're just not effective anymore, no matter how hard you push. Now, this next part is a really critical distinction. The WHO classifies burnout not as a medical condition, but as an occupational phenomenon. And that's a total game changer because it shifts the blame. Burnout isn't some personal failing or a flaw in your character. It's a completely normal human response to being in an unsustainable work environment. The problem isn't you, it's the situation you're in. It's your nervous system's intelligent way of saying, hey, this is too much. So how does this actually happen? Well, it's definitely not an overnight collapse. Let's walk through these 5 stages of erosion so you can see how burnout quietly and systematically takes hold, often while disguised as high performance. You know, the deadliest thing about burnout is how subtle it is. It doesn't come crashing into your life like a tidal wave. It seeps in quietly like a fog. And here's the cruelest irony of all. It often starts when you're feeling passionate and dedicated, when you're most engaged with your work. That's what makes it almost impossible to spot in the early stages. You feel like you're thriving, but in reality, you're starting to burn the candle from both ends. So here's the map of that journey. It kicks off with the honeymoon phase, where that stress feels exciting and productive. Then it evolves into the onset of stress, where the first little cracks start to show. That then hardens into chronic stress, where you're just on all the time. This leads you right to the cliff's edge of burnout, which is basically a state of collapse. And finally, if it's left unchecked, it becomes habitual burnout, where this state is just deeply woven into your life. Okay, stage 1, the honeymoon phase. This is when you are absolutely on fire for a new job or a big project, and it feels incredible. Your energy's through the roof, you're full of great ideas, and you gladly take on all the stress because the work feels so rewarding. But under the surface, your body is just flooding with adrenaline and cortisol, which feels like productive energy. The subtle warning sign everyone misses? Your self-worth starts getting tangled up with your performance. You start sacrificing sleep, skipping meals, missing out on social time, all while telling yourself it's just a temporary push. Now we're in stage 2, the onset of stress. That initial honeymoon glow starts to fade a bit. You might notice your patience is wearing thin. You're a little more irritable with your colleagues, or maybe your family. There's this low-grade anxiety just humming in the background, and your body is starting to send some pretty clear signals that its resources are getting low. You might have trouble sleeping, feel this nagging fatigue that no amount of coffee can fix, or you start getting headaches more often. The big warning sign here is that self-care isn't just on the back burner anymore. It feels like a luxury you just can't afford. Stage 3 is chronic stress, and this is a major turning point because stress isn't just an occasional thing anymore. It's your new normal. Your nervous system is now pretty much stuck in fight or flight.
This is where that annoying brain fog creeps in. Your motivation just tanks, and you might even start to feel a deep resentment for the work you used to love. You start pulling back, skipping team lunches or avoiding after-work hangouts. The really subtle warning sign? You can't remember the last time you felt truly relaxed. Your default mode is just on.
And now we're at stage 4. This is the clinical state of burnout. Your system is basically waving a white flag. The exhaustion is just bone deep. You might feel completely detached from your work and your life, like you're just an observer watching it all happen. The physical symptoms often get worse, turning into chronic issues like unexplained digestive problems, persistent migraines, or getting sick all the time. But the most powerful sign here is a profound apathy. It's not that you don't want to care. It's that your brain, in a desperate attempt to protect itself from toxic stress levels, literally can't anymore. And finally, we get to stage 5, habitual burnout. This is where burnout isn't just visiting. It's moved in and become part of your life's furniture. The fatigue is just crushing, and a persistent sadness can color your whole world. You might feel numb, empty, totally disconnected. At this point, the risk of developing really serious long-term health problems like clinical depression, anxiety disorders, and other chronic illnesses just skyrockets. So this whole progression naturally brings us to a really important question that trips a lot of people up. At what point does this profound burnout cross the line into actual clinical depression? Figuring out the difference is absolutely vital for finding the right way to recover. And you know what? It is a real challenge. On the surface, the symptoms can look almost identical. That exhaustion, the low mood, losing interest in things, the brain fog. And to make it even trickier, long-term unaddressed burnout is a huge risk factor for developing a depressive disorder. So they're distinct, but they are also deeply connected. So this is where we lay out the key differences. Burnout is usually sparked by specific external things, almost always work-related, and those negative feelings are tied directly to that source. If you could magically take away the stressor, the feelings might actually lift. Depression, on the other hand, is much more pervasive and complex. The feelings of hopelessness and sadness tend to seep into every area of your life, not just work. So even though the symptoms can overlap, it is so important to get guidance from a doctor or a therapist to get a real diagnosis and the right treatment plan. So why on earth do so many brilliant, high-achieving people get stuck in this downward spiral? Well, the simple answer is denial. We're just conditioned to push through pain, right? To ignore our body's whispers until they become full-blown screams. We try to use mindset tricks to solve a physiological nervous system problem. We drink more coffee, we buy a new productivity planner, and we just deny what's really happening until our system physically can't take it anymore and forces us to a full stop. But here's the good news. That collapse is not the end of the story. There is a path back. And it's not about trying harder. It's about rebuilding smarter, starting from the nervous system up. So let's look at the real foundations of burnout recovery. Real true recovery happens in 3 stages. The first one, and honestly the hardest for most people, is to acknowledge and accept. That means you have to drop the denial, admit that you are burnt out, and understand that rest isn't a weakness, it's a medical necessity. The second is to create a structure, but not for productivity, for protecting and managing your very limited energy. And the third is to put durable, long-term solutions in place that help you regain a sense of safety and control over your life. Okay, here are 4 practical places you can start. First, prioritize deep rest. And I mean more than just sleep. It's about actively reducing stimulation so your nervous system can finally downshift. Second, do an honest energy audit. What people, what activities, what thoughts just drain you, and which ones fill you back up? Third, you have to learn to set boundaries. This is so hard for high performers because our value often feels tied to being available. Saying no can feel like you're failing, but it's actually the ultimate act of self-preservation. And fourth, create daily routines that signal safety to your body. Look, if this is all resonating with you, if you're seeing yourself in these stages, I really need you to hear this loud and clear. You are not broken. You are not a failure. Your system is simply overloaded. The path to lasting recovery isn't about just managing stress better. It's about gently and intentionally rebuilding your entire nervous system from the ground up. And this is exactly the work that I am so incredibly passionate about. I've seen so many amazing people stuck in this constant wired but tired state. And that's why I created a program called The Calm Rebuild. It's really a structured path for high-functioning professionals who are ready to move beyond just coping. and who want to truly heal their nervous system so they can finally experience lasting calm, clarity, and sustainable energy.
Just to be clear, this is a systematic approach to rebuilding. It's not another list of tips or quick fixes. It's designed to give you the actual tools and the framework to repair the foundations of your well-being. If what we've talked about today really hits home and you feel like you might need a more guided, comprehensive solution, you can learn more about the program at this link.
So let's end with one final thought. We've just laid out the entire map of burnout, from that sneaky beginning all the way through the collapse and into the start of recovery. The most important question is now for you. Looking at this map honestly, which stage are you in right now? Because just acknowledging where you are is the most powerful first step you can take to find your way back. If this explainer was helpful for you, please like and subscribe for more content on burnout recovery and nervous system health. Thanks for being here.